The first time Everett Holston set foot on the royal flagship of King Veydril, he nearly died within 15 minutes. It wasn't because of malice or negligence. It was, according to King Veydril's chief coordinator, a statistical inevitability when humans were involved. Everett, still adjusting to the gravity variance, staggered straight into a low-hanging energy conduit that buzzed with purple light. The impact knocked him flat, his forehead splitting open with a wet crack against the polished floor. "Medic." Everett shouted, clutching his bleeding head as he tried to roll onto his side. The air tasted metallic and too thin for comfort. The alien medic, a towering being with smooth, bronze skin and a circular mouth, was on him in seconds. She pressed a palm to his forehead and muttered something in her native tongue. A drone zipped down from the ceiling, scanning Everett's skull with a beam of green light. "Moderate cranial fracture," the medic announced in heavily accented English. "Concussion probable, you must not move." Everett groaned. "Perfect. First impressions, just me bleeding on your carpet." King Veydril, a slender, six-limbed creature draped in a cape of living moss, glided forward with a grimace. His eyes, large and black as twin moons, blinked slowly. "This," the king said with a slight nod, "is exactly why humans are not permitted aboard without an emergency plan." Everett tried to laugh but ended up coughing instead. The medic barked something sharp, and a stretcher unfolded from the wall with mechanical precision. "Don't worry, Your Majesty," Everett gasped. "Next time I'll bring bubble wrap." The king's antennae twitched. "You will bring a medical team, a trauma officer, a hazard suit, and at least one replacement body in case of death." Everett let his head sag against the stretcher as it lifted him off the ground. "Replacement body, what, like a clone?" "A spare," Veydril said solemnly. As Everett was carted off to the infirmary, he had a feeling this diplomatic mission was going to require more paperwork than he had ever imagined. 3 weeks later, Everett returned to the royal flagship, this time with a full emergency team in tow. Dr. Harold Fenwick, a grim-faced trauma surgeon, checked Everett's vitals every 10 minutes. 2 engineers followed with portable hazard scanners. A small hovercart carried enough medical supplies to stock a minor hospital. King Veydril met them at the docking bay, his 6 arms folded elegantly. "You have learned," Veydril said. "Pain's a good teacher," Everett replied, adjusting the padded helmet the emergency team insisted he wear. The king led them through the halls, which had been subtly modified since Everett's last visit. Warning signs in English had been installed. Hazardous zones were now cordoned off with shimmering barriers. Even the air smelled cleaner, the metallic tang replaced with a crisp, sterile freshness. "The council is still skeptical of human resilience," Veydril said as they entered the grand chamber, a cavernous room filled with bioluminescent plants. "They believe your kind is too volatile," Everett shrugged. "We survive worse back home. Earth's not exactly a gentle place." Veydril tilted his head. "Yes, I have studied your history. Volcanoes, hurricanes, wars, plagues, yet you persist. Stubbornness is kind of our thing." Before Veydril could reply, a deafening alarm blared through the chamber. The floor shuddered beneath their feet. Everett stumbled, but Fenwick caught him by the elbow. "What now?" Everett shouted over the noise. Veydril's face darkened. "Hull breach, meteor fragment, all guests must evacuate." The emergency team sprang into action. Fenwick pulled a collapsible oxygen mask over Everett's face, while the engineers deployed a protective shield around them. Everett could hear the faint hissing of escaping atmosphere, the groan of stressed metal. Veydril barked orders into a communicator. The mossy cape writhed against his back, reacting to his sudden tension. Despite the chaos, Everett noticed something odd. The aliens were moving methodically, efficiently. No panic, no shouting, just swift, practiced responses. Meanwhile, Fenwick was frantically scanning Everett's body for any injuries from the tremor. "You're fine for now," Fenwick said. "But if the pressure drops, you're gonna feel it first." "Great," Everett muttered. "Follow me," Veydril commanded, leading them toward an emergency shuttle bay. As they ran, a section of the ceiling collapsed ahead of them. Veydril leapt backward with impossible grace, but Everett wasn't so lucky. A shard of alien metal the size of a dinner plate slashed across Everett's left thigh. He went down hard, gasping as blood poured from the torn fabric of his suit. "Everett," Fenwick shouted, dropping to his knees beside him. "Not great," Everett rasped. "Pressure bandage now," Fenwick barked to one of the engineers. Veydril hovered nearby, his enormous eyes reflecting the urgency of the moment. "This is why emergency plans are mandatory," Veydril said grimly. "Yeah," Everett groaned. "Point taken," the engineer slapped a bandage over the wound. Fenwick injected a coagulant into Everett's thigh, slowing the bleeding, but the human's face was already pale. "We need to move him," Fenwick snapped. "He's gonna crash if we don't get him into a pressurized med pod." Veydril nodded sharply. "This way." Two of Veydril's guards lifted Everett carefully. Every jostle sent fresh waves of pain through his leg, but he gritted his teeth and stayed conscious. They reached the shuttle bay just as automated doors slammed shut behind them, sealing off the damaged section of the ship. Veydril ushered them into a small, sleek vessel that immediately detached from the flagship, hurtling toward the nearest orbital station. Everett lay on a stretcher, panting through the oxygen mask while Fenwick worked to stabilize him. "This is insane," Everett muttered. "We're not even at war and I'm bleeding out." "Your species' fragility is not a fault," Veydril said softly. "It is the price of your remarkable will to survive." Everett gave a weak snort. "Not sure I'm surviving this one." "You will," Veydril said. Fenwick finished patching the worst of the wound and sat back. "We need a full scan at the station. Could be muscle damage, maybe worse." Everett closed his eyes and focused on breathing, letting the hum of the shuttle lull him into a semi-conscious daze. The orbital station's medical wing was a marvel of alien technology. A scanning bed mapped Everett's injuries in seconds, projecting a detailed hologram above him. "Partial tear in the quadriceps," the alien physician announced. "No major artery involvement, bone intact. Recovery estimated at 6 to 8 weeks with proper therapy." Everett sighed in relief. "Could have been worse." Fenwick patted his shoulder. "You're lucky. Another inch and you'd have bled out before we even left the ship." King Veydril stood at the foot of the bed, arms folded. "You see now why we demand emergency protocols." Everett nodded. "Yeah, I get it. There have been incidents before," Veydril said. "Humans attempting to adapt without sufficient preparation. Some died, some caused chaos before aid could arrive. Our worlds are not built for your bodies." Everett grimaced. "Guess I'm living proof." "You are," Veydril agreed. "And your survival will serve as a testament to our policies." Over the following days, Everett remained confined to the medical wing, undergoing therapy sessions in a specialized gravity field that mimicked Earth's conditions. Progress was slow but steady. He learned to walk with a crutch, then without. The alien therapists were patient but firm, pushing him to rebuild strength without risking re-injury. Veydril visited often, sometimes bringing peculiar alien fruits or books translated into English. He asked questions about Earth's history, its people, its endless catalog of disasters. "You thrive in adversity," Veydril said one evening as Everett completed a set of careful lunges. "You find opportunity in hardship." "Mostly because we have to," Everett replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Earth doesn't cut you much slack. And yet you endure," Everett shrugged. "What's the alternative?" Veydril was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Perhaps that is why we fear your presence, not because you are fragile, but because you are relentless." Everett chuckled. "Well, next time, I'll be relentless with a bigger first aid kit." "You will be relentless with an entire trauma unit," Veydril corrected. Everett laughed harder than he had in days, even as his leg ached from the effort. When Everett was finally cleared to return to duty, he stood before the king one last time, wearing a reinforced hazard suit, a med patch on his thigh, and carrying a detailed emergency plan tucked under his arm. Veydril extended one long, elegant hand. "You honor our ways," the king said. Everett shook his hand firmly. "And you saved my life, so thank you. Survival is our shared tradition, Everett Holston." With that, Everett boarded the return shuttle, leaving behind the flagship and its countless dangers. He knew he'd be back someday, and when he returned, he'd be ready. Because now he understood. It wasn't about fear. It was about respect for the unknown, for the fragile, and for the unstoppable determination that defined both their peoples. The first thing Everett noticed when he returned to the orbital station a month later was the security checkpoint. It wasn't there before. Now a semicircle of armed guards, all wearing segmented armor that shimmered silver under the bright lights, blocked the main entrance. At the center stood King Veydril, his mossy cape trimmed shorter, the living plants now pulsing faintly with blue light. "You were expected earlier," Veydril said, clasping two of his arms behind his back while the others gestured Everett through the scanner. "There was a hiccup with the transport schedules," Everett said, stepping forward. "Didn't think I needed a police escort just to say hello. No escort." "A necessity." Veydril's antennae dipped slightly. "There was an incident last cycle involving another human envoy. We adjusted protocols." Everett's stomach twisted. "Something serious," Veydril's eyes narrowed. "A mild diplomatic disturbance." He attempted to consume part of a ceremonial sculpture, believing it was food. Everett blinked. What was it, shaped like a fruit or something? It was shaped like a blade. Veydril's face remained unreadable. "Right. Well, I promise not to eat anything sharp today." The guards waved Everett through after a final scan. No alarms, no injuries, progress. Inside, the station looked different too. The walls had been reinforced with sleek panels that bore Earth standard hazard warnings, though the bright pictograms clashed awkwardly with the otherwise organic architecture. Gravity felt steadier underfoot, and the air, while still slightly sweet, was much closer to the breathable mix Everett preferred. Veydril led him down a curving corridor lit by soft bioluminescence. They passed clusters of alien dignitaries, most of whom gave Everett cautious glances as though he might spontaneously combust. "Word travels fast around here," Everett muttered. "Survival stories are treasured," Veydril said. "And cautionary tales even more so." They entered a smaller chamber lined with what looked like suspended gardens, vines twining around floating platforms. A low table was set in the center, covered with an assortment of objects that Everett couldn't immediately identify: flat stones, woven metallic strands, and translucent cubes that seemed to pulse with internal light. "This is the artifact you are to observe," Veydril said, gesturing to a cube roughly the size of Everett's palm. "It's not edible, is it?" "No." A pause. "It is, however, highly reactive to human bioelectric fields. Touching it could result in uncontrolled energy discharge." Everett tucked both hands firmly behind his back. "Good note." A side door slid open with a hiss, and a trio of alien scientists entered, each wearing a layered robe stitched with shimmering threads. Their eyes, larger and more luminous than Veydril's, flicked over Everett with open curiosity. One of them carried a handheld device that looked suspiciously like an old-fashioned camcorder. "They are here to record your interaction," Veydril said. "Interaction. I thought I wasn't supposed to touch anything." "You are not. Observation only." Veydril's antennae twitched once. "But proximity alone may yield data." The scientists circled Everett in slow, deliberate steps. He stood still, feeling very much like a museum exhibit. One of them murmured something, and another adjusted the settings on the device, causing a soft hum to fill the room. "Is this safe?" Everett asked, eyeing the pulsing cube. "Safe enough," Veydril said, which was not as reassuring as Everett would have liked. He stepped closer to the table, careful to keep a solid foot of space between him and the artifacts. The cube's glow intensified, threads of pale blue light spiderwebbing across its surface. One of the scientists let out a noise that sounded like a thrilled gasp. Everett froze. "That's good, right?" "Unexpected," Veydril said. The cube lifted off the table, hovering a few inches in the air. It rotated slowly, the light weaving into complex patterns that made Everett's eyes ache if he stared too long. The scientists conversed rapidly, their excitement filling the chamber with a soft, musical cadence. "It's drawn to you," Veydril said, leaning in slightly. "Fascinating. Drawn how?" Everett asked, resisting the urge to back away. Before anyone could answer, the cube darted forward, stopping only inches from Everett's chest. He flinched, but it didn't touch him. Instead, it hovered there, vibrating faintly. "Remain still," one of the scientists said, his accent thick but understandable. What happens if I sneeze? Everett whispered through gritted teeth. Theoretically catastrophic, Veydril murmured. The cube pulsed once, then zipped back to its original position on the table, settling down with a soft chime. Everett exhaled slowly. Okay. That was new. The lead scientist tapped a sequence into his device, capturing a holographic replay of the cube's movements. Another scientist sketched symbols on a floating pad with a stylus that left trails of gold light. You may step back now, Veydril said. Everett did, resisting the urge to sprint. The scientists huddled around the table, speaking rapidly in their own language. Veydril watched them for a moment, then turned back to Everett. Your presence has altered its energy signature. This will require extensive study. Glad to help, Everett said, flexing his fingers to make sure he hadn't been zapped without noticing. You will remain under observation for 24 hours. Everett frowned. Observation for what? Unexpected side effects, Veydril said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Before Everett could protest, two attendants appeared from another door, each carrying a sleek tablet. One of them, a short alien with skin that shifted subtly between shades of green, handed Everett a set of instructions printed in both their native script and clumsy English. He skimmed it. Dietary restrictions, rest periods, emergency contacts. One line caught his eye. Report any anomaly including but not limited to spontaneous luminescence, gravitational distortion, or involuntary time displacement. Time displacement, Everett said aloud. A precaution, Veydril said. Everett sighed. You know, back on Earth, side effects usually mean a rash or dizziness, not warping the fabric of reality. Veydril's antennae flicked once. Your species continually underestimates its own impact. The attendants guided Everett to a private suite outfitted with monitoring equipment. The walls displayed serene landscapes that shifted slowly: mountains, oceans, forests, but the machinery embedded in the ceiling and floor was anything but subtle. Comfortable, Everett said, sitting gingerly on the cushioned bench. You will be monitored discreetly, Veydril assured him. One of the attendants handed Everett a slim band. It latched around his wrist, emitting a soft beep. Vital signs, electromagnetic readings, and molecular stability will be tracked. Should irregularities occur, intervention will be immediate. Molecular stability, Everett repeated. A precaution, Veydril said again. The king lingered for a moment longer, studying Everett with an intensity that bordered on clinical. You did not panic when the artifact approached, Veydril said. Didn't have time, Everett replied. Besides, panicking usually makes things worse. Veydril tilted his head. Another testament to human adaptability, or just stubbornness. I have come to believe they are the same. The king departed, leaving Everett alone with the soft hum of the monitors and the shifting landscapes on the walls. Hours passed in a strange, dreamlike rhythm. Meals arrived on silent carts, nutrient-rich pastes molded into vaguely familiar shapes. Everett picked at them without much enthusiasm. Around what he guessed was midnight station time, the lights dimmed to simulate a sleep cycle. Everett lay back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of alien scrutiny pressing down on him. At some point, he must have drifted off, because he woke with a start to find one of the attendants standing over him, scanning him with a handheld device. Is something wrong? Everett asked, voice hoarse. No anomalies detected. Routine check. Everett rubbed his eyes. You could warn a guy next time. The attendant bowed slightly and withdrew. The next morning, or what passed for morning, the door chimed softly. Everett sat up, stretching cautiously. Veydril entered, accompanied by the lead scientist from the previous day. You remain stable, Veydril said. This is encouraging. Happy to be boring. The scientist stepped forward, offering Everett a small, crystalline disc. A token of gratitude, Veydril explained. It records your biosignature, a reminder of your contribution. Everett turned the disc over in his hands. It felt warm, almost alive. You're serious about this, huh? Your resilience continues to challenge our assumptions, Veydril said. It is both unsettling and enlightening. Everett tucked the disc into his pocket. Guess I'll keep surprising you. Veydril's antennae twitched once. Of that, I have no doubt. They left the suite together, the monitors powering down behind them. Everett walked a little taller, his step a little lighter, as if the station itself had finally decided he wasn't a threat, or at least not an immediate one. And somewhere deep in the station's core, the cube pulsed once more, its light faint but steady, waiting. Everett woke to the gentle vibration of the station's internal wake cycle. It felt strange, rising without the weight of monitors tethering him down or attendants hovering nervously. He dressed quickly in the standard-issue diplomatic jumpsuit, the fabric a little stiff from disuse, and made his way toward the observation gardens where King Veydril had requested they meet. The gardens were a marvel of engineering. Trees with spiral trunks rose from shimmering pools, and enormous blossoms unfurled in slow, deliberate motions. Several alien visitors strolled through, their conversations low and melodic. Everett spotted Veydril waiting near a bridge woven from translucent fibers, the king's mossy cape now threaded with faint gold veins that pulsed in rhythm with his movements. "You appear ambulatory," Veydril said as Everett approached. "Managed to put one foot in front of the other," Everett replied. "No spontaneous combustions overnight either." "The medical council will be relieved," Veydril answered, motioning for Everett to join him on the bridge. The fibers beneath their feet flexed slightly, but held firm, their translucent structure flashing occasional bursts of color with each step. Halfway across, Veydril stopped and turned to face him. "There is one final matter to resolve before your clearance is restored." Everett braced himself. "Nothing involving more sentient cubes, I hope." "No," Veydril said. "You must demonstrate your emergency response capabilities in a controlled scenario." Everett blinked. "A drill, a simulation of specific hazards encountered aboard our vessels." Veydril's antennae shifted, a subtle sign Everett had come to recognize as mild amusement. "Customized to human vulnerabilities. I'm guessing this won't be basic fire evacuation." "Correct. You will be evaluated on adaptability, injury management, and psychological stability under duress." Everett exhaled through his nose. "When do we start?" Veydril gestured to a low archway at the far end of the garden. "Now." They entered a narrow hall lined with hexagonal panels that rippled as they passed, absorbing their footsteps. At the end, a chamber opened up, circular and featureless save for a single console embedded in the floor. A small group of aliens in somber blue uniforms stood waiting, their faces marked with intricate tattoos that glowed faintly under the chamber's light. One of them, taller than the others, stepped forward. "Candidate Everett Holston," he said, his voice smooth and low, "you will be subjected to a series of escalating events. No external assistance will be provided. Withdrawal is permitted at any time but will result in failure." "Understood," Everett said, heart thumping. The walls shimmered, and suddenly he was standing in what looked like a maintenance corridor. Dim lighting, low ceilings. A faint, ominous hum, a soft chime sounded, and a heavy vibration rattled the walls. A status panel near Everett's head flashed red, displaying alien glyphs he didn't recognize. "Simulated hull breach imminent," a calm voice announced in English. Everett scanned the corridor. A pressure door halfway down had partially jammed, leaving a narrow opening. No obvious exits otherwise. He sprinted for the gap, ducking through just as the simulated breach triggered. A rush of artificial wind tugged at his clothes, but he kept moving, heart pounding. The next room was worse. A series of exposed conduits sparked violently, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. A large, translucent pipe overhead cracked, releasing a mist that shimmered with unnatural colors. "Atmospheric containment failure," the voice intoned. Everett yanked the simple rebreather mask clipped to his belt and sealed it over his face. His training on Earth had drilled basic hazard protocols into him, and muscle memory kicked in. He moved low, avoiding the rising mist, and spotted a manual override panel near the floor. He jammed his fingers into the recessed hatch and pulled it free, revealing a lever marked with a universal emergency symbol. A hand slamming down, he hit it without hesitation. The mist vents hissed shut and clean air flooded the room. As Everett caught his breath, the environment shifted again. The walls blurred and reformed into a medical bay, but this one was in disarray. A synthetic body lay sprawled across a gurney, a deep laceration across its leg, eerily similar to the injury Everett had suffered weeks earlier. "Patient requires field stabilization," the voice said. Everett's hands trembled slightly as he grabbed the first aid kit mounted on the wall. He cut away the synthetic flesh around the wound, just as Fenwick had done to him, and applied a pressure bandage over the simulated artery. He checked for circulation distal to the injury by pressing against the synthetic foot. Cool but responsive. Good sign. He splinted the leg using improvised support rods and secured them with adhesive wraps. The entire process took less than 3 minutes, but by the end his shirt clung to his back with sweat. "Stabilization successful," the voice confirmed. Before Everett could relax, the room morphed one final time. Now he stood on a narrow catwalk suspended over a churning energy core. Vibrations shook the structure, panels burst upward, spewing sparks, structural integrity compromised. "Evacuate." The far end of the catwalk sagged dangerously. Everett sprinted forward, timing his steps between the bursts of sparks. Halfway across, a panel gave way beneath him. His foot slipped into open space, and he crashed down onto his hands and knees, pain lancing through his wrist. He gritted his teeth, rolled sideways, and scrambled upright. The exit loomed ahead, a reinforced door with a manual crank. He threw his weight into it, the crank resisting at first before yielding with a groan. The door slid open just enough for Everett to squeeze through, landing hard on the other side. Silence fell. The simulation dissolved, revealing the original circular chamber. Veydril stood at the edge, the evaluation team clustered behind him. "You completed all scenarios without external assistance," Veydril said. "Your injuries were within acceptable limits." Everett flexed his sore wrist. "I'll take that as a pass." "You exceed minimum human standards," the tall evaluator said. Another alien approached, offering a small vial filled with viscous blue liquid. "Topical analgesic," he said, pushing it into Everett's hand. Everett rubbed the ointment onto his wrist, feeling immediate relief as the coolness seeped into his skin. "You will be reinstated for non-critical diplomatic assignments," Veydril said, "under supervision." Everett chuckled under his breath. "Didn't think I'd get a free pass." "There are no free passes," Veydril said. "Only earned trust." They walked back toward the gardens together, the tension easing with each step. Everett noticed more aliens watching him now, but their expressions had shifted, less wary, more curious. "You know," Everett said, glancing at Veydril, "maybe humans aren't so bad to have around in a crisis." "Perhaps," Veydril said, "but it is the crises you survive, not avoid, that define you." Everett smiled, a genuine, weary smile. "Story of our lives." As they parted ways at the bridge, Veydril raised one set of arms in a gesture Everett had learned meant deep respect. "You have adapted," Veydril said simply. Everett nodded. "And next time I'll bring 2 first aid kits." At that, Veydril's mossy cape shimmered briefly in amusement, and the king turned away, disappearing into the living garden. Everett stood there for a moment longer, breathing in the strange, clean air, feeling the ache in his muscles and the quiet pride in his chest. He was still battered, still a little broken, but standing. Always standing.